The views expressed in this podcast do not represent the views or beliefs of members or affiliates of the Political Science Association and is presented with the sole purpose of promoting a diverse political discourse. While this presentation aims to inform audiences of current issues, producers advocate for further individual research of political topics discussed.
Hello, my name is Emily Walker, and this is going to be our podcast. I'm going to be your host for today. Just a little bit of background. I'm a nursing student and currently the president of Political Science Association. Today, our guest speaker is going to be Mr. Alejandro de Leon.
Hi, my name's Alex. I am a recent graduate. I have a master's in history and political thought. I'm a All-In Democracy Challenge National Honor Roll recipient. And yeah, we're here to cover Super Tuesday and International Women's Day.
All right, awesome. So today is actually International Women's Day. Well, the day that we're recording this, it's the 8th of March. So just a little bit of background info also about International Women's Day. It actually was moved to March 8th in 1913. It is also known as the United Nations Day for Women's Rights and International Peace. And basically this day is just to recognize all the women in the world. It's international, so every woman in the world, whether it be educators, it can be activists, it can be just mothers, any woman who's going through any tough time, or maybe they're just raising kids, or maybe they don't have children, or maybe basically all women are included in this. So it's just a day to appreciate women in general and women's history as well. So Alex?
Oh yeah, well, International Women's Day is all about women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. For Laredo, there's one person that really stands out to me and that I want to mention for International Women's Day, and that's Jovita Hidar. She was born in 1885 here in Laredo, Texas. And what I really like about her is that she was a big-time activist. In October 1911, she founded and became the first president of La Liga Femenil Mexicanista, the League of Mexican Women. And she started becoming politically active at a time when Mexicans were the victims of violence, lynchings, racism, very commonplace. But she was also, a journalist. So she worked at El Progreso. And while she was there, she wrote an article protesting President Woodrow Wilson's decision to send U.S. troops to the border. And the United States Army and the Texas Rangers did not like that she spoke out. So they went to the offices of El Progreso and tried to shut it down. When the Rangers arrived, Hidar stood in front of the door and would not let them in. However, they did come back at a later time and shut down her paper. But that didn't stop her. She kept writing and reporting on injustices towards the Mexican-American community. And yeah, I think this is a very little-known Laredo activist in our history, our proud history of anti-racism attitudes, and kind of why we have this progressive streak about us here locally.
Yeah, and she's just one example of many women that are important in history, and then all women in Laredo, of course, and in the world. Again, International Women's Day is just about empowering women in general and supporting other women and giving them the support that they need.
Oh, yes, and in that vein, we wanted to give a shout out to the TAMIU Gammas who are having an International Women's Day March on tomorrow, the March 9th, from 12:30 to 2 p.m. at the STC patio. So if you manage to hear this in time, go ahead and check it out. Go support. They're standing up against violence against women and really out there. It's important to support each other.
That's awesome. Now I wanted to talk about an article that I read in the morning. So as you know, International Women's Day supports all women internationally and women's rights. So women's rights, of course, differ from depending on what location you are in the globe. So I actually heard that there are women's marches going on in Pakistan right now. So this article was actually titled International Women's Day with Shoes and Stones, Islamists Disrupt Pakistan Rally. Basically, this article is talking about the divisiveness in Pakistan right now, how there were two really powerful photos, one side of the protest with a woman holding up a sign saying "My body, my choice," whereas another photo showed a counter protest from a religious seminary, basically women who are more traditionalist. So
It's like night and day. I mean, the woman in the first photograph is, no what you would call classic clothes, right? There's no shrouds. There's obviously she's not a Muslim or not a she doesn't practice Islam, but it's very different to see somebody who's counter protesting in a shroud and her just kind of out in the open with her sign. So
yeah, it's honestly very interesting. And what was even more interesting also was when I started reading the interviews that they had with some of the people who are participating. So one person actually said that, like I had mentioned, that Pakistan is getting more and more divided over time, that there are different ways that people are supporting feminism. And, feminism is very individualized. Every person has their own interpretation of what feminism is. So, for instance, the group that had held a sign saying "My body, my rights" were more like Western feminism kind of ideals, whereas the counter protest from the religious seminary was a group of individual women who were more traditionalist, and they thought that they were representing their feminism by adhering to their religion. And so you have a disagreement, and it's a very strong disagreement between these two groups. And that's just not only in this location, but all over Pakistan. So I think it's really interesting how it's evolving and how women's rights are evolving as well. So I'm just curious to see what kind of changes are going to happen in the future, actually, in these areas.
yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I noticed with the article was the kind of the framing, right? That seems to indicate that there's a big divide over feminism, and yeah, I'm sure there is some kind of disagreement on how best to do that. I'm no expert on feminism, but my understanding is that if a man can do it, a woman should be allowed to do that as well, and that's basically the core of it, right? Equal pay for equal work, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to see the kind of arguments being made on what is feminism and what isn't, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
All right, so we're going to start covering what happened last Tuesday. Last Tuesday was Super Tuesday, this past March 3rd. So we're going to start covering what happened in the Democratic primary. The big winner of Super Tuesday was Joe Biden. He is currently standing at 667 delegates. He leads Bernie Sanders with 575. And, we have Elizabeth Warren coming in third with 67 and Bloomberg 63. Now it's down. The race is now down to just two candidates, and we're going to talk here a little bit about what we think going forward.
So, me personally, you do need 1,991 delegates, which means that just puts them. They both need more than 1,000 more delegates in order to get the nomination. So it's still, I mean, it is Super Tuesday, but it just goes to show that they're still like very early on in the primaries. They really haven't. They don't. I mean, this could go any direction. I mean, we saw what happened in 2016 with Trump and Clinton.
Yeah, that's true. Bringing up 2016 and the Democratic election, at this point in time, Bernie Sanders was actually way behind Hillary Clinton. That's what a lot of people don't realize. He actually needed about 70% of every remaining state to, win a plurality or a majority of delegates and the popular vote. So relatively speaking, he's actually doing pretty well right now. If you're rooting for Bernie Sanders, right? That's
he's way ahead, more ahead than he was last time.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all have our personal opinions, like who we are rooting for. But I'm sure that everybody, no matter what your opinion is, you can agree that this is a really close election.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about Webb County. I mean, it's pretty interesting that Bernie Sanders actually won Webb County. He lost it in 2016 to Hillary Clinton, who had something like, let me see, I think Bernie had only 6,000 votes in Webb County. He's improved that to 9,846. So he saw a nice, significant chunk of Webb County go out to vote for him. Behind that, though, was strangely Bloomberg. I mean, that one caught me by surprise. I don't know about you.
Sure. Yeah, because nationally, Bloomberg only has 63 delegates. So he actually has even less than Warren at 67. And then they're both trailing behind Sanders and Biden, who are both above 500. Yes. So, I mean, to see Bloomberg as the second most popular in Laredo or Webb County was very surprising.
That's truly surprising. Considering, I mean, I drove around from personal experience. I didn't see a lot of Mike Bloomberg signs. I didn't even know he had support.
Oh, yeah. I did see, I wasn't sure. I think there are some that they recently put in front of TAMIU. I don't know if if you go through the entrance, the intersection, the loop, and
Oh yeah, they had a
yeah,
yard sign, right?
yeah, they
It's not even a big
did.
sign. That's easy to miss. You're going like 70 miles an hour down Loop 20.
Yeah, and I mean that's usually where everybody puts their political signs, but I started seeing a bunch popping up at the very end, like right before what voting day was. I did see some Blueberg, like he had a teal colored one, right? Like he made his kind of stand out. I honestly really liked his design. He used teal instead of the traditional
Uh,
navy or royal blue,
yeah, they
and
look
it
pretty cool.
stuck out. So when I saw them, I knew that they hadn't been there before. I'm pretty sure that they haven't. So I mean, he was kind of smart throwing out a bunch of signs and stuff at the end, but I mean, obviously it worked. You got second place in Webb
Yeah,
County,
you know
so
what? If there's any Mike Bloomberg voters out there, leave a comment. Let us know like why you support him, how you heard about him, and what the atmosphere was like for you here in Laredo.
yeah. And then who was behind Bloomberg? Was it Warren
Uh,
or
in
Biden?
Webb County,
Yeah.
oh, it was definitely Joe Biden. He had 5,372. Michael Bloomberg hit 5,903, and Warren had 1,486 votes.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay. Yeah, I see. I mean, that's definitely different from the national delegates right now. So Webb
yeah.
County did differ from the rest of the country.
Yeah, we're a little more progressive, I think, than we are giving credit for.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, I think a lot of the youth in Laredo especially is progressive. I
Oh
think
yes.
that the next generation who's going to be going out to vote is more progressive than ever. So, we're going to start seeing more of these progressive candidates moving up in these elections. So, people like for instance, Biden, who is a little bit less progressive, but he is still considered a Democrat. He You're going to see people who want to be elected, candidates like him, are going to start losing votes. And you'll see people like Bernie and Bloomberg maybe getting votes.
Well, Bloomberg is out of the race now, so maybe not
Well,
so much.
people like him, but
Yeah, I get you,
obviously,
get you.
people who don't drop out of the race. But yeah, like right now, we actually lost already Bloomberg and Warren. So
Hmm.
their delegates are really. What happens to their
Their
delegates
delegates
actually?
actually get to hold them till the convention in June, and they get to kind of use that to their advantage and kind of provide some leverage of where they want the party to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in 2016, Bernie may have lost, but he had quite a bit of delegates, and because of that, they were able to push for a couple of progressive uh, issues and causes onto the platform. They were adopted into the actual Democratic platform, Hillary Clinton's platform, because Bernie's people were able to push that. So if Joe Biden, who's the front runner right now, ends up winning, I have a lot of confidence that the party platform is going to move more left thanks to Bernie and Warren's efforts. And I really think that we're going to see a party that's, you know, more in the middle of both those issues.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure that the whole political spectrum is moving. Especially, I know that politics in general is getting more divisive. It's called political polarization, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So people are moving more right and more left than ever, and we're not seeing so many moderates anymore. It used to be that Democrats and Republicans really weren't so different. They just kind of differed on certain policies, but now we see a lot more extremist people who are very, very left or very, very right, and that's what we've been seeing more or less moderates. People are more firm with their positions lately.
Well, there is some truth to that. Let's talk about, for instance, back in 2012, you know, this issue of a wall on the border. It was kind of shot down by even Republicans, such as Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger in California. It didn't really come to the forefront till Donald Trump brought it back up in 2016. So, you know, leaders tend to have a pretty big influence on where the party goes. It's not so much the individuals at the bottom; it's more of a top-down kind of effect. I seem to think, right? Um, so yeah, there is a bit of divisiveness, but it's really kind of how the party is really getting into that. This is what we represent, and this is where what our foundations are built on. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward how this all shapes out.
Yeah, and then we're all, I don't know, myself, I'm 21, so I just recently started voting, and seeing the difference from, I didn't get to vote in the 2016 election. I wasn't of age yet. I didn't I was at the time, at the end when voting was happening, but I didn't get to register in time because I wasn't 18 yet. So I really wanted to add my vote to Bernie at that time personally,
Yeah.
but I didn't get to. And now what you're seeing is that a lot of those kids like me who were kids in high school and
Kind of in
now,
the sidelines back in 2016.
yeah, basically that were on the sidelines but still supporting certain candidates. Now that they're of age and they're registered to vote, you're gonna start seeing that in this upcoming 2020 election, they're gonna be their progressive movement is gonna be
Oh yeah,
soaring.
it's
Yeah.
gonna start taking off. I mean, there's a lot of motivated activists out there in the community that are really starting to learn how to organize, and you know, it's inspiring to see. Webb County's historically had a lot of low turnout, but we've seen that change in recent elections.
Yeah, which is good. I really, really hope that more and more people become politically activized. They get the confidence and they get the empowerment that they need to go out and go vote. And I mean, us as PSA, as Political Science Association, we love doing our part. So we release we'll release the locations that they can go vote, the precinct information. Of course, it's always best to go to early voting because those are the most convenient locations to go to, because I believe that on voting day you have to go to your specific precinct.
That is correct.
But in early voting you can kind of choose.
Yeah, whatever's closest to you, most convenient to you. Most locations are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So early voting is definitely awesome. The last couple of elections we saw maybe 60% early voting. So Laredo's doing a pretty good job of hitting early voting. It's just, you know, our overall Webb County numbers tend to be a little lower than the rest of the surrounding state.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately. But I mean, as always, like, we're nonpartisan, and we really, really care about just getting people civically engaged, right?
Oh yeah, it's all about educating, investing, and organizing this community.
So everybody, no matter what the political opinion is, what side you lean, or what candidate you prefer, it's always important to know your options for voting, and just make sure you get out and vote whenever you have the opportunity. So for the next elections, everybody will know what is available to them and what opportunities they have.
Yes, ma'am.
So I kind of felt it was necessary for us to talk about, coronavirus.
Oh, it's in the news. It might
Yeah.
even be on campus.
Yeah, no, no, I
Just
mean,
kidding.
I kind of felt hesitant at first bringing up this topic because as a nursing student, I have like my own personal opinions about coronavirus. But
You're definitely our resident expert on this.
honestly, I can't predict how coronavirus is going to travel or, anything like that. I mean, we can, of course, like tell people to wash their hands, basic precautions. Don't cough on people, cough into your elbow or, stuff like that. But that's stuff that, the public should kind of know in general. It prevents flus, colds, like not just coronavirus. It just prevents you from getting sick in general, usually.
So you follow those basic guidelines. I mean, you should relatively stay unscathed.
Yeah, like I mean, you'll still get sick somehow. There's always gonna be like a germ or two somewhere that makes it to you. But these are the ways to prevent illness. But anyways,
Well, it kind of reminds me of the scare that we had back in 2012 with Ebola. There was a lot of concern people had, and Ebola, it wasn't an issue in the United States because we're a first world country where everyone has easy access to water, soap. We have good hygiene. Like, thankfully, we have that access to it, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case for a lot of people in Africa and other countries. And that's why they started suffering so many, losses, and they were seeing a lot of people infected. But we just don't have those issues here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same with coronavirus, where you can have coronavirus, but if you're not somebody who's immunocompromised, like the elderly, or somebody who's sick, like those with cancer, or there's a lot of different ways you can become immunocompromised.
Hmm.
But basically, that just means that your immune system is brought down, which makes you more susceptible to illnesses in general. So,
So if you've been battling the flu, then that would make you more susceptible to another.
yeah, your immune system goes down a little bit. But I mean, it always depends on the person. Some people's immune systems actually like afterwards go into overdrive and they're like, yes, like empowered. But I
They just
mean,
needed the exercise, huh?
the exercise, yes. No, but for the most part, people who get sick often, like those, like I said, with cancer or the elderly, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why somebody can be immunocompromised, and it's kind of dangerous, the situation where we're having now, that a lot of people are going out and purchasing items in bulk. For instance, hand sanitizer specifically, and masks as well. A lot of people are buying these items with not necessarily the need, because a person who's not immunocompromised will present with symptoms that are kind of like a flu,
Yeah.
but where these
Oh,
deaths are coming from, it's dangerous to those who are, the elderly or immunocompromised. So when they don't have access to these items, it becomes more dangerous for them, and it's only going to increase the amount of deaths and the people who get it.
okay. And how do you get coronavirus? For those of us that don't know, if I hug somebody, will I get the coronavirus?
Well, coronavirus is spread by droplets. So, like, that's why I had mentioned like washing your hands and coughing on people. The droplets, even micro droplets, they're really small sometimes and you can't even see them. But these droplets actually carry the illness inside of them if you have it. And some people, people who are not immunocompromised, like I said, and they just get flu like symptoms, they might not even know that they have coronavirus, which is why a lot of people estimate that the amount of people who are infected is actually way higher than what we think, but they think that they have a flu or a cold or something
Hmm.
different. Um,
I think testing has been an issue in the United States. A lot of people don't have access to testing kits, so we don't really know just how infectious it is here.
yeah, and there's a lot of people who, when they get sick, they just stay home, and they don't really go out to a doctor. And these symptoms, like for
But so is that a
instance,
problem though? If you get infected and you don't know what you have, but you stay home, could that be an issue?
you mean like to spread it to people?
Or, could that be an issue for them health wise? Is that a dangerous situation they're getting themselves into?
Well, the people who have this illness, like I said, they're going to get like flu like symptoms or a cold like symptom if they're not immunocompromised. And that's when the risk goes up that you're going to get pneumonia, which is usually what causes death. But the it's let's say somebody gets sick and they don't know that they have coronavirus, and they start going around and coughing in public. Let me just give you a scenario. Somebody with coronavirus goes out and they think that they have a flu or a cold, and they're like, no, well, I have to go get my groceries. They cough on their hand, don't wash their hand, start touching like all these things that other people will be touching.
Every single avocado.
Yeah, every single avocado in sight, or literally like whatever. And then somebody comes in, like an elderly person who is also coming to get their groceries, and then they are not aware of these droplets being there on their precious avocado, and they touch it, and then that's how it spreads, unfortunately.
Okay.
So there's like a combination of things that happen. A lot of it can be like, the risk can be greatly reduced if you just practice, good hand hygiene, and also coughing hygiene by coughing in your elbows. So I did hear that as well, that in Washington, the highest concentration of coronavirus is actually happening right now,
Hmm.
especially in Seattle. So they've had a lot of, they're not on lockdown, but everyone in Seattle specifically is being very cautious at this point, because I did read that there was a daycare facility in specifically, which there's a lot of elderly people who go to those facilities. There were a lot of deaths that came out from there. So that is probably a result of somebody coming from the outside in and then spreading it to the patients or the clients, and
Yeah.
then they spread it to each other, and unfortunately stuff like that happens. But yeah, they've been canceling a lot of events, and even here in Texas they canceled South by Southwest.
Oh man.
Yeah, a lot of people were looking forward to it, but I mean, of course, everything is for safety. You know, things like this are always dealt with hygiene, and preventing contact with people if you really don't need to be in contact with people, because somebody can go to one of these events, come into contact with somebody who thinks that they have a flu, and then
And boom, you're infected.
yeah, they come home and then give it to their grandparents or somebody that they know, and that unfortunately is how this stuff happens.
So everyday people, healthy college students probably don't have to worry so much about, being a victim of the coronavirus.
No, don't run out and start buying toilet paper and hand sanitizer, because again, you're kind of taking away these items, like especially the hand sanitizer and the face masks. Those are particularly things that these people really need. And people like you and I who are not immunocompromised, if we were to go and buy these, I went to the Dollar Tree the other day and they did not have one single bottle of hand sanitizer.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad because
Luckily, I stocked up. Just kidding.
But, okay, well, it's just really, it's scary for these families that have somebody that they care about and they know that this person is at higher risk of getting sick, and then there's people who are not immunocompromised. But there's a lot of misconceptions about the illness, which I understand, and I think that the media has a huge part to play in this misinformation being spread around, and it causes kind of like a hysteria with the public. I think that, I mean, it's happened before. It happens with, what was the last?
SARS.
Swine
Ebola.
flu.
Swine flu.
Swine flu was a little scary because there was cases here in Laredo and in the south of Texas, right?
I believe so.
It just adds up to the media profiting off of this story. And I mean, it's just important to do your research and to know who is at risk and what you can do to prevent yourself from getting sick, but also putting a focus on how you can prevent getting people who are more at risk sick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are all good tips. Is there anything else you can tell us about coronavirus, Emily?
I mean, I think that that's like something that everybody can follow easily, but another thing is not to give in to what the media says. So don't try not to spread misinformation, because I've seen a lot floating around.
When it comes to internet literacy, that's one thing we've really struggled with as a society. It's very easy with Facebook to just hit the share button, and all it has to do is just be a scary headline and boom, people share. They don't even read the articles.
Yeah, and that happens a lot.
Yeah, so take care, people. Just don't start clicking share and thinking it's going to save people's lives, because it just might be some misinformation.
Yeah, it could hurt somebody else.
I think I heard somewhere that hand sanitizer doesn't actually do anything to the coronavirus. Is that what I heard?
Really?
Yeah, I heard that. It might be some fake news I read somewhere.
I'm sure we're going to start seeing little stickers added on the hand sanitizers, including coronavirus.
Yeah, well, they're antibacterial, so that doesn't actually affect the virus, does it, right?
The hand sanitizer? I would think that it does.
It's 99% off.
That it'll
high concentrations of alcohol will do the trick.
Yeah, high concentrations of alcohol will do the trick, but that hand sanitizer kills 99.99999% of germs in general. So it can also help prevent colds and things like that. But I also did read an interesting article where there is a brand of vodka here in Texas, and some people were just talking about hey, since everyone is running out of hand sanitizer, maybe we should just start using this brand of vodka to wash our hands. And I mean, of course, they clarified that no, it indeed does not work. So before anyone runs out to get vodka or alcohol and the hardest liquor so they can wash their hands, that's not necessary. Simple hand washing is gonna do the trick.
Soap and water, warm water, sing happy birthday twice, and you should be okay.
So just wash your hands for 20 seconds, like Alex was saying. Wash your hands for 20 seconds, warm water, soap and water. If you have access to hand sanitizer, I guess, but don't go out and buy it quite yet, because that way we can save some for the people who really need it the most. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really funny story, though. I don't know. In case anybody wanted to know, I think.
Do you think they were drinking when they came up with it?
Maybe, perhaps they were like, let me just pour it all over my hands. But it has to be at least 60%.
You know what? Somebody must have just spilled on themselves and try to play it off like, well, it's to prevent the coronavirus.
I spilled my hand sanitizer. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really funny article, and people are dealing with coronavirus in their own ways. Comedy is one of them. So that's great. All right, so I think that will wrap up our podcast for today, but you can catch another one soon. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been quite an honor to be the first guest on the podcast. And, I just want to remind everybody that if you haven't, go ahead and to our Facebook page and like PSA. And yeah, keep following up on everything that's going on politically. Tune in.
All right, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.